Welcome to the Whole Wellness Mama Summit, everyone, where we are unlocking the healthiest, joy filled mom in you using strategies from various productivity, wellness, and parenting experts. I'm Amy Nesbitt, and I am talking all things morning routines that work today with productivity guru Megan Sumrell. And some of you may recognize Megan from last year's summit because I just love her purpose and everything that she teaches. She is a former corporate executive turned entrepreneur. And as a business owner, mom, and wife, she knows exactly how hard it is for us to juggle all the things while still maintaining our own sense of self and purpose. And as the CEO and founder of the Pink Bee, she took her 20 plus year in her career in systems and processes and applied it to all things time management, organization, and productivity. She's the creator of the Top Program and Planner, which teaches her proprietary planning and time management system. So, welcome back, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill to be here.
It's always exciting to talk with you. And some are still meeting you for the first time. So, can you share your quick story of how you came to where you are?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I've been in the corporate IT space for over 20 years. Loved my job, loved what I did. Really, my job was to go into software organizations and create harmony out of chaos. And so, really help them streamline their processes. I have a lot of certifications, training, and expertise in that area. And when I became a mom, I discovered pretty quick that the time management, planning, and information organization systems I'd been using for over 20 years just didn't work at all anymore. So I realized, ironically, this is what I did for a living. So maybe I ought to take myself on as my own client to say, how do I take all these new inputs and things juggling for my time? And can I find a system that's going to help me kind of get back in control of my calendar again instead of living in that kind of just in time moment? So that was kind of, I started this as a need to solve my own problem. And now it has landed me in a place where I've left my corporate life behind. And I'm on a mission to share this with women all over the world.
Oh, I resonate with that so deeply. From the first time we talked, right? I just hit me in the heart. I was like, oh my gosh, I love Megan. So I'm a huge fan of morning routines as
Me
a full-time working mom that I like to do all kinds of other things too. And I can't stay sane without it. And so can we start at the fundamentals of what is the purpose of a morning routine?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because most women I meet will tell me, yeah, I have a morning routine. But first, I think it's important to understand the difference between a morning routine and a morning task list. Most women have a morning task list. Very few have a what I would call a true morning routine. So the purpose of a morning routine is to have some things in the morning and some time in the morning that is 100% in service to yourself, doing things that kind of, to use the phrase, fill your cup for the day, that set you up for success for the day, instead of waking up, your feet hitting the floor, and you are now in service to others the minute your day gets started. And if you are a working mom, that is doubly hard to do. To shift away from this morning task list to morning routine. But I think it's important to understand it doesn't need to be a 3 hour thing. You can create a really powerful morning routine that might only be 10 minutes long. But again, the point of it is to serve yourself and get yourself ready for the day before tackling that morning task list that most of us have.
Can you elaborate a little more, like what a routine would look like versus a task list? Because some
So,
people,
a morning task list, which I did for a long time, was the alarm would go off, or it would go off in the terms of small feet walking into my room and waking me up, right? Depending on what kind of
resonates with
alarm
that.
that is. And then instantly making breakfast, packing lunches, helping get kids, dressed, going out the door, making my own lunch, all these things that are things that have to get done that, I mean, I don't love making breakfast. Packing luncheons doesn't quote fill my cup, it's here I am doing things for others. So that is where most people are like, no, I've got a morning routine. It's the only way we get our house running. Well, that's a task list. Whereas a morning routine can be, and I'd love to talk a little bit about how we pick what some of those activities are because they're different for everyone. It could be, journaling for 10 minutes. It could be, this is not for me, it could be yoga for some people. It might be doing a crossword puzzle, right? So it might just be sitting in complete and utter silence, drinking an entire hot cup of coffee without having to put it in the microwave 3 times before you get through it. So there's that subtle difference of a morning routine is in complete service to ourselves, whereas a morning task list is usually involving service to others.
Oh, I love the clarification because you're right. A lot of the things we do are just, okay, these are the things that we just need to get done, but we kind of have it in a particular order, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
one of the things I've started to do is charge outside of the bedside, right? Because once you pick up that phone, it's just kind of everything goes haywire and your brain goes haywire. But then I get through the things that I want to do. I am one of those yoga people.
Yeah, and it works great. And there, I'd love to talk about why some people are and some aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I discovered the book, which I think many of us have probably heard of, the book called The Miracle Morning. There's a new edition out, which I'm rereading right now. But I read this book because I was on a quest for, I was like, okay, like how can I amp up my morning game? So it's like, oh, you got to read The Miracle Morning. So I'm very much a rule follower. So I read the book and I did exactly what it said to do. And I did it for the full 60 days. And I found at the end of the 60 days, I was more miserable than I was at the start of the 60 days. And being a woman, what do? I immediately go, well, something must be wrong with me. I'm doing it wrong, right? So I did a deep dive on really trying to find, finding a morning routine for productive people. And what I kept finding was almost all the recommendations were coming from men, and they all involved the same kind of core things: journaling, yoga, meditation, lots of quiet, lots of uninterrupted space, and all of that. Well, the more I dug on this, because I was like, journaling first thing in the morning is not good. Yoga makes me angry, which is kind of funny because that's counterintuitive to what yoga is supposed to do. And my mind is one that meditation doesn't come easily to me first thing in the morning, but mid morning is when I have the space in my brain for that. So again, I went down the path of what's wrong with me, only to discover this really fascinating research that had been done relating to the Myers-Briggs personalities and morning routines, showing that based on your personality type, there are different things that will and probably won't work for you as a way to start your morning. Um, and the first place I always start with people is understanding, are you an introvert or an extrovert? But not the way we think of it socially. Kind of, if you're feeling tapped out, what do you do to recharge? Do you prefer to be around noise and people and all of that? Or are you someone that's me, which is everyone leave me the heck alone and I need to be quiet? I am definitely one who recharges as an introvert. So for me, what that means for a morning routine is if I start my day, excuse me, with noise and people and talking and all of that, it's not good. It sets me up. I have a very hard time coming back from that, and I'm very irritable. So whereas other parts of my personality, I am easily overwhelmed, and I'm a very high achiever. That is why yoga and meditation are not the right way for me to start my day. But sitting with a cup of coffee and doing a logic puzzle for 5 to 10 minutes, like that's my jam. And so when I started digging into this and seeing all these different suggestions for different personality types, it showed me crystal clear that every productivity routine I saw out there written by men were 100% the wrong thing for me and my personality type.
What's so funny is that your routine and how you get into the coffee and the logic puzzle is my husband. I'm like, I see it. I see it. That's what he,
Yeah, right?
yeah. Um, but I like to kind of wake up. I like to look out at the sun, although time change kind of throws that off at the beginning
Yeah.
because the sun is not there. But I like to look at the sun. I like to scrape my tongue. I like to just do a few stretches because we kind of wake up all tense,
Mhm.
you know. So kind of moving my body is one of the first things that I do. But again, I set the phone out so that I don't touch it, and then I go see my family before I touch my phone at all. I think I'm an in between an introvert and an extrovert.
Yeah, and so that's actually what we call an ambivert. So if people rank kind of right in the middle, you're called an ambivert, which I would love to be an ambivert because it gives us so many more options of ways to refuel than if we are really leaning heavily on introvert or extrovert side. And I think another big misnomer in these morning routines, because again, most of the ones you go and watch and follow, they're a minimum of 45 minutes long, like minimum. And so, you're a mom with a kid waking up at 5:45. Now you're like, okay, so now I'm setting my alarm. Sometimes I come in at 5:30. Now I'm setting my alarm at 4. Like, how the heck this sounds miserable to me. And so when I was first crafting that time for myself, it was back when my daughter was at around 2, a very early waker at that time. And I realized like I need 15 minutes. I just need to be awake for 15 minutes before I am in service to her to have a cup. Like at that point, I was in the stage where all I want to do is wake up and literally just have a cup of coffee and kind of just sit and not be talked at. And so that was the start of my morning routine. And what I put in place, which I love to recommend for kids with littles, was I found one of those waking clocks. So I set it to where the clock would slowly turn green at 6 a.m. And she knew until that clock turned green, she could not come out of her room. Now, did it happen on day one? Of course it did not. But by the end of the first week, we had worked through all the kinks of, but I was hungry, but I was thirsty. So we'd lay out a little snack and some water the night before. So she woke up before the light went off. She would have those there and she just needed to wait until that light turned green. So I knew unless there was an emergency, if I just got up 15 minutes before her, that then I would have that time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that clock worked great for us as well, with the transition that you mentioned. And even now, the kids, when the door is closed, they don't come in. Even if it's the weekend and it's a little later, they might peek in sometimes, but they, they'll read on their own or whatever it is until we come out. So I value that. But I know so many moms out there are going, "Oh my gosh, if only I could get that time or
Well,
figure
I'll tell you, it was very funny because when we first put the clock in play, I talked to her. I said, listen, my family, there's a whole other story of my family knows me as 3 different people. So I am Megan, which I always tell them I was Megan before I knew any of you. Megan needs to still be Megan. My husband calls me Megs. So we got married, I became Megs. Then my daughter was born, son, I became mom. So I always talk in those 3 ways. So I sat her down. I was like, listen, mom doesn't really wake up till 6 a.m. Mom's not available till your light turns green because she is doing things for Megan before then, but she is all on deck to be mom when that light turns green. So it was the very first morning we're testing out this clock. And I was sitting upstairs quietly and I hear the door open. I'm like, here we go. And all of a sudden my little door to my little space opened up and there was her little, bedheady face about 5 minutes too early. And she thought she'd cracked the code because she leaned in and she says, "Excuse me, Megan, I was wondering if we could have some breakfast." It wasn't snarky. It was in her mind. She thought, oh, it's just, I can't say mom before 6. So I turned around. I said, Megan doesn't know how to do those things, but mom will be down in 5 minutes when that light is green. And so we had a few bumpy mornings kind of working out the kinks with it. But then once it's set, it's set. And again, you could even start with just 10 minutes doing something that is solely for you, not knocking something off your task list. You could read one page in a book. Maybe you are someone that likes to journal. Maybe you just want to stretch, right? Maybe you want to sit in silence. Maybe you want to sit outside. You really get to discover what I call a relaxer instead of a stressor. And our goal is to start our day with at least one of those.
love that. Do you have any guidance on should we add more? Or is it just really figure out what works for you? What is that thing that really fills your cup first thing?
Yeah, so I kind of take people through a 5-step process of how to figuring all this out. And one of the last things that we go through is saying, okay, we've got this dream list of here are all of the things that totally relax me, that if time weren't, a limit, here is what I would do. And then we actually do the math equation of, okay, what would this mean for my wake up time? Like if I did everything I wanted to do right now, I'd have to wake up at 4:45. I'm not waking up at 4:45. So instead, I've picked, all right, for this season right now, what are the things that really I enjoy? that I can fit into the time frame of which I'm willing to wake up. So I am fine waking up at 5:30. So it has allowed me to change it up a little bit too. So some weeks, like there's my little logic puzzles are my 100% have to, but sometimes I might choose to read for an additional 5 minutes. Whereas other mornings, if I'm like, I'm just not feeling like reading, that then I have permission to pull from the list of the other things that are there. And you may find, like, I've had seasons where, again, my morning routine was all of 10 or 15 minutes. I've had other seasons of life where my morning routine's been an hour long. And it changes in summer months versus school months for me as well. But once you, again, the whole point is to key in on start your day in service to yourself first. You have permission to change it up as kids age, your requirements. Like this year was a big change for us of having to leave our house so much earlier to get to school. So I had to get rid of a couple things that I like to do in my morning routine. And now instead I do them in the evening.
Oh, I love the flexibility that you mentioned because, like you mentioned earlier, we have this tendency to beat ourselves up of, oh, I meant to do that thing and then I just didn't. I'm such a failure. I'll try again, or maybe it's not even I'll try again tomorrow. Oh, this thing just doesn't work for me. Right.
Yeah.
So that flexibility of figuring out what is right for us, what is that timing that would work for us. Um, and it's okay to shift it when the time is not right, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And I would say communicate with your family as well. Like when I was really trying to lean into this, I finally just sat them down and I was like, listen, no one's enjoying me in the morning. I'm not enjoying me in the morning. I know you all aren't. I'm very just easily irritable. And I said, I just need that little bit of time uh, to serve myself before I can be on for you all. This is my personality. So I'm willing to wake up, but I need you all to participate with that. And now I do tend, even on the weekends, to get up before my family. But when my daughter was younger, my husband and I finally sat down. I'm like, I can't be the one on every weekend. I want to sleep in too. So we came up with alternating. One of us got Saturday morning off. One of us got Sunday morning off. And I gave myself permission on the weekend I was on that when my daughter got up, I would give her like a toy or something that she didn't usually get first thing in the morning that would entertain her to give me that little bit of quiet before kind of being on for the day.
There's so much I want to unpack because I think moms just have this tendency to give, 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 and we feel bad asking, right? And
100%.
communicating is huge. So I love that you brought up that part of getting everyone on board because there's a huge difference that they see when we actually fill our own cups first, right? So it's not
Yes.
this completely selfish thing. I know it gets talked about a lot of self-care. It's a necessity, but it really, really is. And it comes back a
And
hundred.
for me, this boils down to so much more than self-care. This is mental health. I mean, I could sit here and try and pretend I'm somebody I'm not, but I just know I show up better for everyone if I just don't hear the word mom or Megan spoken to me in the first 5 minutes I'm woken up. Unless like maybe I'm waking up on a vacation and I've slept in, like that's a whole other story, right? But in terms of the daily grind, I think we all have a choice to try and be someone we're not and then feel guilty, or to say, what do I need to be as mentally healthy and ready to go for this day that I can, and understand, again, there's compromises. I would love to have an hour to myself every morning. I'm not willing to wake up as early as it needs to do that, but I know if I can get 10 or 15 minutes, it makes all the difference in the world. And then the people I live with saw the difference that it makes. And so now we're all kind of on board with this.
Yeah. Yeah. On the school days that I take my kids in, I'm up and then out by 30 minutes, but I take that first 10 minutes, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference for me in the mood that I'm in. And when the kids come and say, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I got it. I got it. Like,
And
I'm not
you can
like,
even like split up your morning routine because I mean, we do have tasks that we have to do. So for me, I'm making sure I at least get that little window of right now it's the New York Times app. There's 3 games on there. I play with
yeah,
my coffee in the morning while my dogs are doing their thing. Then I do have to go into some task mode stuff. But then once the day has started, my first 15 minutes at my desk is a little bit more of things that really serve me before I go into full work mode. So I always want to tell people, like, especially if you've got really, really littles, like you might be where you're waking up, where you are needing to nurse a child or something, right? You can say, all right, I'm going to wake up and do that. But as soon as that act of service is done, I'm going to take those next 15 or 20 minutes for myself. So I do recognize when we all have times where maybe our day does have to start in service to tiny human beings that need us to live. But don't let yourself then get caught on that roller coaster of suddenly it's 3 o'clock, you're burnt out, and you haven't had a hot minute for yourself to do something that you want. And I think the best advice that I always hear people give moms of young ones is, when they nap, take that time for yourself. And it is so easy to be like, oh my gosh, I can finally get stuff done, right? And so we go doing all the tasks when reality might be, what if you divided it? What if just that first 20 minutes of nap time, you just gave yourself permission to do something that filled you up before you jumped into doing other stuff as well. So as much as I love starting our day, if you're in that stage of life where that's just not realistic for you, then I challenge you to say, how soon into your day can you get that for yourself?
I think it's a huge mindset shift too, right? Of
Mhm.
how do I, or what do I need? One, knowing what you need and actually being able to make space for it and make time for it.
Yes. Yeah. And prioritizing it as much as we prioritize the things we do for others.
Yeah. And I'm a huge life skills for kids person. And so we can talk about that a different time, friends, because I'm all about that. And that actually frees time for ourselves to get these things.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can, I mean, like, that's why I talk about bring your family into this. If you're educating your kids, hey, this is a routine I need in the morning, and here's why I need it. It makes me happier. I'm more efficient, all of those things. You're setting an example for you're showing your children a routine in action. And so whether you realize it or not, they start to think about it. Like my daughter, now she's 13, will be the first to say, I just can't start my day this way, mom. Because and I love that because she's heard me talk about it so much.
Yeah. I love the whole modeling thing because even in your other story where your daughter peeked in, they are listening, they are observing, they are understanding. They're
Yep.
trying to figure things out their way and to be able to model this healthy boundary and be able to say you need to get what you need, and it's okay.
Yeah. And I
Selfish.
think we're also showing our kids, like my daughter now with the school that she's in, we get home a little bit later in the day, and there's a very little window of time before dinner. And so I'm thinking, let's just use your time to get your homework done or whatever. And she thankfully paused and just said, Mom, I need like 15 to 20 minutes when I get home from school to just go do something mindless and fun for me. I need a break. And I'm so glad that she felt she could and should say that to me, making sure that she is taking care of what her mind and body needs to then be able to show up and get any homework or whatever done. And so I think we can empower our children to speak up with what their needs are and what they might need to show up as their best self. And sure enough, if we try and get into action right after school, it's an ugly afternoon. Whereas if she has that time and that space, the rest of the afternoon and evening runs much smoother for everyone.
Yeah. That's such a powerful tool we can give our kids at an early age because we have had to learn this as adults, right? Where we need to take
Still
that.
learning it.
Yes. Yes. It's a growing journey, ever learning journey. But if we can give our kids the tools to do that at the head of adulthood, that's fantastic. Well, we always like to end our talks by giving everyone a quick action or challenge to start implementing something and taking action instead of being overwhelmed by all the information. Can you share your challenge for our mamas?
Yes. So here is my challenge for you. I want you to take just like 2 minutes. You don't need to spend any more time than that and brainstorm and come up with all the things that relax you, things that you would call as a total relaxer. Make a list of them. Then go look and find, is there anything on here I can get in just 5 minutes or less, right? Maybe it's reading, writing, whatever that may be. And then challenge yourself to just wake up 5 minutes earlier tomorrow to do just that one thing and see how different your morning and day feels.
I love that. You also have a fantastic freebie for everyone. Can you share what that is?
Yeah. So if you are someone that is, as so many of us are, struggling to figure out how in the world do I take everything competing for my time and figure out how in the world to get it all done without killing myself along the way, I've got a great free video training that really introduces you to my proprietary planning system. And it's all about how to plan, manage, and control your calendar, even if it's incredibly unpredictable, which as moms, let's face it, life is. So I've got that free video training available over at theworklifeharmony.com.
Perfect. And we'll have all the links included so that you can just click on over and find Megan and connect with her because you're going to want to connect with her further. And anything else that you want to share with our mamas before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just always love to share this because someone said it to me once and it was incredibly powerful. And I heard it at a time of life when I needed to hear it. And it is simply this: you are worthy of support. And for me, part of that support means prioritizing time for myself. And so I just encourage all the moms out there to treat themselves with the same amount of love and tenderness that we treat our children.
I love that. Oh, I love that. I know one of my friends said, "What would you tell me?" Right? Because she is my friend. What would I tell her to do? And like, yeah, we don't give ourselves the same grace or the same love. But
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you so much, Megan. It is always a pleasure learning about your productivity tips, tricks, wisdom, and helping our mornings, our hectic mornings, turn into a thriving space for us. And as always, mamas, drop your questions in the Facebook group because we want to get your questions answered all about routines and beyond throughout the summit. Tell us how the challenge went, and we will see you for more amazing summit speakers.